Hello everybody, welcome to the NCGA FMC Ag Weather Outlook, November 21st, 2015. I'm John Felt. Well, it was a very active week, both in the form of snow and rain, heavy in both cases. Here's the snow, and it's still continuing over the eastern sections of the region. Up to 18 inches of snow over parts of northwest Iowa, smaller part of South Dakota, southeast South Dakota. Very widespread 4 to 8 inches of snow in this medium shade of blue here, and then 2 to 4 inches in the lighter shade of blue. So a good, what would you say, about 50% of snow, or 50% of Iowa is covered with a decent covering of snow. So definitely an early winter storm in that region. You can see it drops off very quickly further to the north and to the south. Now, while Iowa received the snow in northern Illinois, look at the area of widespread rain. I mentioned last week that it would be confined into a narrow axis, and it was. It didn't extend too far into the eastern Corn Belt, but you can see this axis from Missouri through St. Louis up into northern Illinois. Northern Illinois actually had both these tracks. They intersected right here. So this is that rain track. This is that snow track. So very busy over the northern half of Illinois over the last week. But if we look at the percent of normal rainfall, you can really see how such a large part of the Midwest had above normal precipitation, and that's anywhere from 2 to 4 times normal for the week. The brighter colors are 4 times normal for the week. And it was bookended by much drier conditions, much less rain. That's the red, that's below normal over the upper Midwest and the eastern Corn Belt. Michigan, Ohio, parts of Indiana. So last week, really, it was either you got a lot of precipitation or you didn't get much at all. Now, temperatures are changing right now, but they did average above normal last week. But look at this here. This is a current wind analysis, and the arrows are the direction the winds are flowing. So these winds are coming down here, and we have these north winds. On the other side of the system, they're easterly winds. And if you track this here, you could look at these arrows right here, and here's your low pressure. This is the culprit that's brought all the weather, the snow and the rain. And it's moving off towards the northeast, but that's going to bring in much colder and blustery weather over a good part of the region this weekend and into early next week. So let's take a look at the weather forecast. This is the jet stream this week. You wouldn't think it'd be all that eventful with this type of pattern. The jet stream's not severely dipping to the south or to the north, but at the same time, we are going to be dealing with some fluctuation in temperature and a gradient of temperature too, with very cold conditions persisting over the western regions and then variable conditions over the east. I'll give you an example. This is on Sunday morning. Look at the low temperatures. Really cold for this time of year. And one of the reasons is this is a fresh snowpack, and that fresh snowpack, once the winds die down, we're really going to drop off temperatures. So it's even showing single digits in some areas over northern Illinois at this time, but teens very widespread, and 20s a hard freeze now over almost the entire region. So this is our hard freeze, our widespread hard freeze. It's sort of been scattered up to now. This is that widespread hard freeze. Now, if we look at later this week, this shows that gradient I talked about. This is midday on Friday, and you can see it's still quite cold over a large part of the upper Midwest, not so bad over the eastern Corn Belt. But it really looks like we're looking at a cold week over the Dakotas, Nebraska, Minnesota, and probably with that snow, Iowa and parts of northern Illinois, Wisconsin as well. Going out a little bit further towards the end of the week here, or 6 to 10 days out, we're getting this dip in the jet stream in the west, a little bit of a bulge in the east, and that will give us that pattern. That dip in the jet stream will keep the western part of the region quite cool and the east milder. Very strong gradient here. So that means if you're in the western part of the Corn Belt, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota, very likely at least western parts of Iowa and Kansas, that region is likely to be averaging below normal temperatures very much, perhaps for the next 2 weeks. The eastern Corn Belt is going to have some variability, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, but it's going to average near normal. And then as we get into the early part of December, we're looking at the jet stream perhaps bulging a bit to the north, but again, temperatures fairly close to normal. Those extreme cold will probably moderate, but this looks to me like fairly close to normal. Now, we do have a system this week that's going to be pushing through, that's going to bring another possibly a heavy rain over Missouri, Illinois. This looks very similar to the one we just had, where it's going to drop off to the north and to the east. So it's very likely that areas east of this line here won't get much precipitation at all. And once again, Illinois, parts of western Indiana, down into the St. Louis region, parts of Missouri. Another possibility is several inches of rain, maybe even a little bit more, close to maybe 2 to 3 inches of rain. So that's really getting wet now over parts of Illinois and parts of Missouri. So we've been in a fairly wet pattern. Upper Midwest, quite dry this week. So now that we've had some snow, I want to keep my eye on snow as well. This is the remnants of the storm that's moving across. You can sort of see where the snow will be moving this weekend. Maybe some lighter snow over the upper Midwest, but other than that, it does not look like much activity this week. Now, as far as precipitation anomalies, areas in yellow are going to be drier than normal, areas in green wetter than normal. So really a fairly normal week as far as precipitation, with the exception of this region right in here. This region being snow, and then this region being rain. So this looks like that's going to be the action spot this week. If you're not in that, it looks like a fairly normal week as far as precipitation. Looking out ahead right now, week 2, looking out 15 to 20 days out, fairly quiet, and likewise week 3. So models, these climate models, this time of year, a little bit hard to say, but right now it's saying that once this week gets through, we could have a little bit quieter weather weeks 2 and 3. So here are your takeaway points from this week's briefing. It's going to be starting off quite cold on the backside of the system. Western parts of the Midwest is going to remain cold. Eastern, some variability in temperature. And I think the big story this week is going to be another wet and soaking rain with some scattered flooding over parts of Missouri and Illinois, and also smaller parts of Indiana. So hopefully you can stay warm with this early snow and cold moving in. Have a great Thanksgiving, and I'll be talking with you again next weekend.